Well, in the past hour, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has spoken about that airstrike at Parliament.
Despite the maximum efforts we are making to avoid targeting civilians, unfortunately, a grave mistake took place yesterday. Knesset members, the death of any civilian not involved with Hamas is a tragedy, yet it is a victory to Hamas.
Now, because Israel has banned Al Jazeera from reporting from there, we are talking to Sara Khairat, who is in the Jordanian capital, Amman. So the Israelis, Sara, have now acknowledged that civilians did die in this strike. How do we view that? Is this quite a rare acknowledgement from them?
Well, you had him saying it was a tragic error, but you also had the military's chief prosecutor earlier say that it was very grave, this incident. We also had a statement explaining from their side what had happened, that they'd carried out this airstrike, an aircraft that had targeted, they called it precise targeting, of two Hamas commanders that are responsible in the West Bank wing, they said. And then they said that a fire had ensued, and that's where, it was, without saying it, is what they're trying to say, that it wouldn't have been so tragic if it hadn't been for this fire that took place. Regardless of that, yes, it is somewhat rare because, in the opinion of many, is because of this ICJ order, because they know that all eyes are on them in terms of them carrying out what many have called a genocide in Gaza, and also because they know that there is a potential arrest warrant against the Prime Minister himself, as well as the Defence Minister. Also, its ally, the US, had warned against going into Rafah. Now, that ICJ order had included them withdrawing from Rafah. So for such a tragic event to take place in such a horrific way, they know that they will be questioned on this. Despite that, in that same speech, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that he will continue with this war. He says that this is the only way forward to get rid of Hamas regardless. He also said that they are continuing the fighting in the north as well as the south. We know in an Israeli statement earlier this morning, they said that they had targeted more than 70 targets in the last 24 hours, mostly in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. So on the one hand, they're saying it's tragic and that they are independently investigating this. But from the track record of Israel during this war, not just the targeting of humanitarian aid workers for international organizations, we've also seen that they have killed their own soldiers in friendly fire, including 3 captives. And that didn't go down too well. So all of these events, they say that they will investigate, and certainly the track record shows that they have managed to get away with it so far. Whether they will be able to continue getting away with this, we'll have to see how the international platform, the world will respond to this. But we've certainly been hearing a lot of criticism already, not just from regional leaders, but internationally as well.
Right. And in the last few hours, Sara, we've heard that an Egyptian soldier has been killed on the Rafah border by the Israeli army. Can you give us any more information about this and why it could be significant?
The Egyptians have confirmed that a soldier was killed, they said, in an incident on the Rafah border. They didn't give any details. They actually didn't mention the Israelis. What we do know from the Israeli side, though, and certainly this was reported by Israeli media and confirmed by the military through the Israeli media, that an incident had taken place earlier today. It seems from the Egyptian side firing first, and then the Israelis say they responded. Both are saying that they will investigate this situation. But also, this is going to be problematic, certainly for the mediation talks when it comes to the negotiations regarding the ceasefire deal. Egypt is a mediator. They've met many times in Egypt. It's a tricky situation for Egypt because it does have a peace treaty with Israel, and diplomatically they've remained peaceful for many, many years, and certainly militarily quickly. But Egypt has somewhat been annoyed by the situation, even though it hasn't necessarily been always vocal. It certainly stopped the the aid trucks from coming in. And when the US had asked a couple of days ago and pushed the Egyptians to allow it to come from the Abu Salam crossing, they eventually agreed. But this was in protest, the Egyptians said, at the fact that the Israelis took over the Gazan side of the Rafah border when it's supposed to be the Palestinians in control there. So will we see any military escalation? Highly doubt this. They'll both be investigating it, but diplomatically and certainly when it comes to mediation efforts, this will be a very tricky situation.
Right, thank you for that, Sara Khairat, there for us in Amman. Well, Israel's opposition leader has blasted Prime Minister Netanyahu in the Knesset. Here's what he had to say.
Mr. Prime Minister, why are you still in office? In what world do we live in where the Prime Minister responsible for the most catastrophic failure to the Israeli people since the Holocaust remains in office? How do you have the right to stand up and ask for forgiveness from the people of Israel and then go back home safely and peacefully?
Now, as we mentioned a little earlier, an Egyptian soldier has been killed in an exchange of fire with Israeli forces. Shots were fired from both sides along the Rafah crossing with Egypt and Gaza. Israel seized control, of course, of the Palestinian side earlier this month when it began its ground assault off Rafah. Let's get more on this. We can speak to Rami Dajani. He is the project director for Palestine and Israel at the International Crisis Centre. He joins us live from London. Thank you for your time. So just give me your reaction to this news that an Egyptian soldier has been killed in this exchange of fire with the Israeli army. How serious is this? Do you think it could end up becoming a political issue?
Well, already the situation at the Rafah crossing and the Philadelphia corridor is causing a great deal of tensions between Egypt and Israel. The overall situation in Rafah and the Israeli operations there are causing tensions across the board. This is the latest in, what have been a series of escalations. This started with the start of the ground invasion in Rafah, and then developed subsequently with the takeover by Israel, the takeover of the Rafah crossing, which led to its closure and the significant sort of impact that's had on the humanitarian situation, and also raising security tensions with the Egyptian side, which sees this as a violation of various agreements, including aspects part of the Camp David Accords.
Yeah, exactly. Could we go into that in a bit more detail for people perhaps who don't realise the historical relevance here? There is that long-standing peace accord between Egypt and Israel, and it is very long-standing. It has been very robust. So to what extent do you think this could have an impact on that?
Well, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of sensitivities, and they have to do more with also practical conditions on the ground. You can talk about the agreements and the legal sides of them, but there are practical considerations that the Egyptian side has, understandably, given the developments in Gaza, the fact that you have hundreds of thousands of Palestinians that are now essentially being squeezed into these sort of narrow areas in the south of Gaza in a situation, as your previous reports indicated, are including, significant aerial bombardment that is targeting civilian population. So the Egyptians have a great deal of concerns about these developments right at the border with Sinai. The security implications are, extremely important for Egyptian national security concerns, and but they also affect the political aspect of the agreements between them. Although I think the security developments on the ground are probably more important right now.
And it's worth highlighting, isn't it, that Cairo has adamantly refused to open that border crossing on the Egyptian side to let, many of the displaced people go. They say they won't do that until the Israeli military withdraws.
Well, the Egyptian position has been quite constant on its interaction with the crossings with Gaza. Is that this is a crossing with the Palestinians on the other side, and they do not wish to see a normalization of the functioning of the crossing with the Israelis on the other side. And I think also it's an expression of the Egyptians' discontent at the fact that the ceasefire negotiations did not end up, bearing fruit, and the fact that the efforts of Egyptian and Qatari and U.S., frankly, diplomacy did not end up, bearing fruit at the end, and that we're still in the situation we're in right now. And rather than having something like a sustainable pause or ceasefire, we are now in a situation where the Israeli military is getting further entrenched right at the edge of the Egyptian border. And this is something that is a cause of concern, as I said before, for the Egyptian authorities.
Thank you for that. Rami Dajani, Project Director for Palestine and Israel at the International Crisis Center. Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.